name is Diana Stewart, and I just love red shoes. I've had about 10 pairs of red shoes, and the ones, I only have 3 at the moment, but the others I've worn out, basically, or given away because the heels have been too high. But these, I will never get rid of these. But these were really useful because halfway through the evening, if my feet were a bit tired, I had them in my bag and I could put them on and then dance all night, which I did. Yes, it did. It did attract special people. But yes, I remember that when I met my husband, that was actually a day when I was wearing red shoes. Well, I always wore red shoes. And I think, now I come to think of it, I was wearing these red shoes because I had a black outfit and a red scarf. So I wore red shoes. These are lucky shoes, yes. Although it didn't last that long, but still. I went to work with UNESCO in 1964, and I became a model when I was in 1967. Actually, because I went to a school to learn how to walk, because although I loved dancing, I was very wary about crossing a room because I didn't know how to walk. I felt I didn't know how to walk properly. So I went to a school to learn how to walk, and it was a model who was doing it, and she said that I ought to do some modelling, so I did. Because I remember going, if I went into a nightclub, I liked to be seen, and when I was dancing, but I was very shy when it came to talking to people. Well, I gave up modelling and acting. Why? I think it was, I was in a nightclub and people were talking to me as if I was an object. And in those days, now in all the photos and in Vogue and everything, you're called, you know, your name is actually there, but in those days, your name was never mentioned. The photographer was, the magazine or the collection, but there was no name, so you were a nameless object that happened to be wearing clothes. And I got fed up of being treated like an object. Red shoes symbolise energy, fire, enthusiasm, positivity, and also they're very good for my complexion. So anything red just attracts me. But I think putting on red shoes or red boots in the morning, I just come alive, wake up. I don't think I can wear red shoes and be negative.
My name is Ben Pierson. My object is a small wooden cooking spoon. The story behind my object is when I was very young, I liked to do baking, and I have a very clear memory of whenever I did baking with my dad, I would use this spoon, probably because it was small and so was I. And then it just sort of moved with me. So when I went to my first apartment, this spoon came with me, then the next one, and then the next one. And then I realized that I kept the spoon for about 20 years without really noticing. So then I always made sure when I moved that this spoon came with me. We would make cakes and stuff. I remember also that we were allowed to lick the bowl out. We were allowed to lick the spoon after we'd finished baking. So I would try and lie to my dad and say that, oh no, the bowl was empty when it clearly wasn't, just so I had more stuff, more raw cake batter to eat, because that was the best bit. I feel like I did bake a lot with my dad. He worked in London, so I didn't see him much during the week. Fun memories of Dad, and I think that's why this is like a physical manifestation of like the weekend and all the stuff from when I was little. People say that that I am very much like Dad. He's in his 60s now, but still says he doesn't know what he wants to be when he grows up. I am still close with Dad. Him and Mum got divorced when I was about 12. So maybe that's why keeping it is why it's got a bit more meaning. I feel that it was a simple time because I was very young. I think the further on you get away from that age, it becomes more about school and then jobs and then bills. It was a time when it was just happy. I think anyone would go back to the time when, like when the memories of this were made. As I said, there was no bad in the world. I don't see why anyone wouldn't want to go back to that time, possibly not to relive from that moment onwards. That's a different sort of question, but to go back and visit this moment, even just for a little while, yeah. Why wouldn't you? If I could make one more cake, I would go back to the early 90s and make a corn pops cake. It was my favourite cake to make, probably because it was most full of sugar. Definitely that cake.
My name is Chloe Ambrose and my object is a hot air balloon. I remember that year, so last year, my word of the year was thrive. And whenever I pick a word for the year, it always comes from my gut. I never pick a word from my mind. And I remember going into this little shop and the ceiling was full of all of these hot air balloons in lots of different shapes and sizes. And it was probably one of the very first objects that I bought for myself, and also wanted to give myself a reminder that, you know, life is a journey. And I think for next year, especially because the year that I just had was very difficult, that it would pose as a reminder to be free, break out of the box and fly. Not physically in a hot air balloon because I'm afraid of heights, but it still works as that nice reminder. I think it's good to have a word that underpins the year that you want to have and that intention for that year. So, for example, last year, my mum got cancer and it was a really, really tough year. And that year for me was all around rebuilding myself. So my word for that year was the rebuild. I think at the start of every year when you pick a New Year resolution, it can be quite granular, very specific, but actually having a word that motivates your actions and the opportunities in which you put yourself forward for and the direction in which you go, it's good to have that word. So last year was rebuild. I think the year before that was thrive, and now it is fly. I think next year, I don't want to focus so much on self-development. So next year, the word of the year is love. And like I said, it came from my gut. I think next year is going to be the year for love and whatever shape that that comes in. It could be a friendship, it could be a nice gentleman, but we'll have to see. So my word of the year is love next year. There have been many moments in my life where I haven't been very kind to myself, and I think it was that journey that I undertook that probably sparked the journey of self-love. I spoke to myself negatively to the point where even if I looked at someone's eyes, I'd start to deduce how they thought about me, what they perceived of me, and I thought, I don't want to talk about myself like that anymore. It's exhausting to have all of those thoughts running around your head and putting yourself down. Why can't I be my best friend in my head? Why is that such an impossible thought? I recently wrote down that when we befriend ourselves, we are never truly alone, because you can always tap into that friend that you have within yourself. And when I have these little cues around my bedroom to remind myself that, you know, I'm not just me, I'm angry me, I'm jealous me, I'm funny me, professional me, cheerful me, and there are so many different versions of me that I can call on during those particular moments in my life. Like when my mum got cancer, I was angry, Chloe, a lot. I didn't know I had an angry version of me, but she was very angry. Having objects that remind you to practice self-love is important. It reminds you that, do you remember that moment in which you felt really inspired by yourself and you bought that particular thing? Or why don't we get it out and remind ourselves of that memory? And we have objects that remind ourselves of friendships, of families, of loved ones that we have lost. And I think it's important to celebrate those versions of ourselves that we have been. I always use the analogy that in Doctor Who, he always regenerates. And he's so excited to become the best version of him or the next version of him. And it doesn't matter if he's a woman or old or young, he's still looking forward to shedding that person that he is and seeing who he's going to become next. And I think objects such as these remind me of who I've been and who I am yet to become.